Imagine you are preparing for a race, a running race. You've been preparing your entire life for like 20 years. And then the day have started, the day have come. You are at the start line and you're getting ready. You're waiting for the start signal, but then instead of start signal, you hear an announcement of the winners. The winners are those who started 30 years before you. That is a current situation.
So when boomers were on average 30 years old, they already by this age accumulated almost 20% of entire wealth in the United States.
When our generation, Millennials, were on average 30 years old, around 5 years ago, we only owned 3%
of the entire wealth. You would imagine that we all want to build a world when at least the moment when you started the race would affect your outcomes. Or maybe even in opposite direction, we all want to, for our kids and for the next generation, to be wealthier than the previous generation. All the development of technologies and increase of productivity should lead to such an outcome.
Moreover, if we will actually look at the productivity throughout the last 60 years, every 30 years, through the last 60 years, productivity increased 4 times.
So with the same trajectory, we would expect that the wealth distribution also will look differently. And some assume that this accumulation of wealth by the previous generations is something natural.
It's just like market rules, but it's not. If we will look at this picture like more in details, we will see that it's never been like this before. It is not going to be like this after. It's just like specific generation born in early, like late 40s till 60s, rigged the system towards their benefits. And that's what we see right now everywhere in the world.
This happened mostly through regulations, which step by step, initially with a good intention, to provide better benefits, better welfare and social support. Step by step, all these great ideas of pension system and other different social benefits, they all step by step led to that picture. And if we will look, for example, most of the data points which we will share through this speech related to United States. But if you will look at any other market, even though every country has some specifics, but different nuances in regulations, but the outcome is almost uniformly the same. So one of the drastic difference which we observed when we first arrived in the United States in 2010, we moved to the United States in 2010, was when we saw how easier it was for companies to raise funds.
For us entrepreneurs to raise money to finance our businesses compared to what was in Russia.
Long-term investment, really cheap funding for the companies. But in contrast, we saw how hard it was for individuals to actually do the same. So every time we would meet with some of our friends, they will either complain about themselves being with significant student debt, or they will complain about their kids that they have such situation right now. And through this prism, we start to learn more and more how actually it happened, because their parents, current students' parents, they enjoyed almost free college education. And all of us know that United States is quite market-based capitalistic system. That's why everyone assumes that for sure the education there should be quite expensive. But in reality, it wasn't the case 30 years ago.
So when people usually look at the education, the tuition price in the United States, we look at the Stanfords and Harvards of the world, but we actually should understand that it's around 50% of people in the United States actually getting higher education in some form, like after-school education. And clearly, the Ivy League universities cannot.
Just a fraction.
It's just a fraction of everyone in the system. And what we're talking about the city colleges of the United States. So like the price there is somewhere like 10,000-ish. I mean, like around this a year, which is not like 50,000 for the Ivy League.
But it used to be almost free. 90% of this tuition used to be subsidized by the government. If you will go to your local college, to your state colleges, you actually will get a subsidy which used to be equal to 90%. It was government funded, but right now it's not the case. Almost half of the tuition would be paid by you as a student, and only half of the tuition would be subsidized. So first time when we learned that, we thought that maybe it's because government actually decreased the funding. But it wasn't the case.
But instead we find out that the funding was increasing all the last 15 years. So it's like it is more money per student a year spent from the governmental budgets today than it was 15 years ago.
So through the prism, we were puzzled. What is the source then for the tuition to grow, to subsidized tuition to grow? And we found out that there is an item, quite a strange item in the budget, is transfers to pension funds. So this higher share of the money which was supposed to be spent on the subsidies, they went to the transfers to the pension funds. So
for teachers who used to teach before these current students even saw them.
The same in through this prism, there is a significant transfer of the wealth. So something which was available for any student in the country. Now it's not, and now the money which right now being paid from our taxes actually used to fulfill the promises which were given 30 years ago.
So it's sort of like whom to blame pensioners, which sounds ridiculous, but in the context of political system and understanding that in the system where you would vote for the majority, you would aim for the majority to vote for you. You only need to find the majority big enough to be the winner. And in today's world, the median age of voters, of people who actually can vote, is around 50 years old.
Imagine it's kind of obvious, because before 18, you cannot vote. That's why the voters' population is inherently age biased. It doesn't represent the real population. The real median age of the population would be around 30, 35 years, while the voters' population is much older. And that's why when, for example, in the United States, you will hear what a politician would propose for the election, you will see most of the
promises to be towards the benefits for the pensioner.
And even when young people are promised something, for example, in the United States, it was promised to give forgiveness for the student loans. But actually it never happened, even though all the rest of the promises, like for example, promises to increase benefits around Medicare, which is health insurance for elderlies, they all were fulfilled. But the promise which was given to young people never.
Not never. Several $1 billion was forgiven out of $2 trillion. So like it's a drop in the ocean of the problem. What's also interesting is that if you look deeper into the system in the United States, and it's like obviously it's a case of the United States. As we said, like you will find similarities everywhere, different taste of the same problem, but people like pensioners in the United States basically have free healthcare. Like for everyone, like healthcare in the United States is super expensive. You usually have to pay like really expensive insurance and stuff like this. But for people older than 65, it's completely free, and it's all go from the budget. So like the benefits towards the older generations are increased to the extent that the governmental debt, which we all hear that the United States has a huge governmental debt. It's basically this. It's governments printing additional money to cover the promises for the pensioner, for the older generations. And this problem seems to be unsolvable because the voters basically voting for those politicians who are benefiting for them. And the majority of the voters are people who actually benefit from such system. Then the question is like, how do we fix this? Because the similar trajectory, which led from 20% wealth distribution, like owning 20% for the boomers when they were 30 years old, to like a little bit higher than 3% for our generation, and for your generation is going to be that by the age of 30. Like on average, in the United States, people of the Gen Z generation by the age 30 will likely have nothing. Like will likely still going to be in debt from the student loan and from not owning real estate and paying rental because they cannot afford to pay the down payment and all the stuff like this. So there are a number of contributing factors, and most of these factors are regulatory. And these regulatory factors will not be able to change from a political point of view, which they were introduced from a political point of view, because of the way how policies are structured and how democracy basically structured.
So for us, for all these years, when we thought about this problem, we, from the very beginning, we realized that we need to propose a solution which won't be through politics, which will use the market tools and market mechanisms to actually rebalance the world and rebalance the economy. And to empower young people and actually provide the needed capital to young people so that they actually can thrive, they can start their own ventures and to be able to fulfill their potential. And through this prism, we realized that one of the things which probably should change, it's even not a technology, but actually definition.
Definition of what wealth is. So throughout ages, centuries, we could see the development of understanding what wealth is, from like owning the land to owning property and money, and then to owning stock, shares of companies. And then in today's world, basically the richest people of the world, I don't know, Antoine Arnault, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, who else is there in this list? Those people each worth something around $200 billion of personal wealth. But none of these people actually have this money on the bank account. All this money is a stock, is a share, is their ownership in the companies which they created. And these companies, if we look at them, these companies doesn't have this money as well. It's not on the balance sheet. It's not that the property of these companies worth, what is it? Amazon is 1.7, $1.5 trillion today, or something like this. So like closer to like between $1 and $2 trillion. Amazon or LVMH or whoever was like Tesla and SpaceX, none of these companies actually have the money on the balance sheet as well. The money to be valued in trillions of dollars. But the valuation, the market capitalization of these companies represents expectation of the earnings of those companies. So basically, if we look at Amazon, it's likely 60 access to the earnings, what we're talking about right now. So like 60 years of the future earnings or expectations is going to grow faster than it's actually growing right now.
But when your wealth is measured, when your wealth is calculated, only the money on your account will be used. While in reality with young people, most of their wealth is in the future. Most of their wealth in their potential. And if we will use the same type of concepts as we used for companies, actually we all will realize that most of the people in this room are millionaires. And you most likely don't feel
yourself to be millionaires. Like probably there are a couple of millionaires in here, but like raise your hand who feel yourself as a millionaire.
Yes.
More than a million. More than $1 million of your personal wealth. Like there are people like this, I'm sure. Like, but few. Each of you, to some extent, is a millionaire.
But you don't behave this way. You don't act this way. You don't feel that you have capital and all the needed resources to actually act the way you would act.
Even no money for down payment, like to get a mortgage for a house. But through your life, it's expected that you will actually earn enough money to cover the full cost of the house. It's not going to be your entire wealth. It's going to be like 20% of everything which you will create as an output of your work.
So as true scientists, we decided to make an experiment on ourselves. That's what you should do. If you're in science, you have some idea, you
should first like make yourself a guinea pig. So the two of us decided that we will try to build a model. The model which represents a weird number, an annualized risk-adjusted earning for our future. And then we took this number and then we got a sort of market capitalization for ourselves, for our future, for the next 30 years of our productivity. And using this, we actually created a company. And we signed a pledge agreement with this company, a specifically designed agreement, which is fully legally binding agreement in the United States, that everything which we will create in the next 30 years will belong to this company. And at the very beginning, basically, we are 100% owners of this company. So we own the company which now need to be valued. And then for the company to be valued, we just go to the market and offered investors to buy a share of this company. Last January, the company was valued in $400 million. And the investors are people like Mark Andreessen himself, Chris Dixon, and some other prominent investors in Silicon Valley.
So this number is much higher than our current accumulated wealth. And we are in our 40s. So if you're in your 20s, the difference would be even more dramatic. And as Daniel mentioned, right now you are 100% owner of it. You just don't use this wealth. You don't know how to use this wealth, and you don't have tools and market ready to actually interact with you through the prisms that you actually have the wealth.
think of this through the prism of companies and shareholders in the way we think about them today does not exist maybe like 600-700 years ago. And the idea of shareholding and the private companies selling their shares for the public market and stuff and similar concepts developed throughout last 500 years. And moreover, the public market as we know it exists only for 100 years. So honestly, it's not as crazy to think that this model can become a natural market model for the future, where every human being will be able to sort of tokenize the future and become a company of itself, of its own, and then have the leverage of using the capital of the future, of using your future money. It's yours. You will have it in the future. But you will be able to trade with investors so to get this capital earlier and actually achieve much more in your future because you now have the capital to build your future.
Yes, it's true that the previous generations, they accumulated significant wealth. In the United States, it's around, only in pension funds, it's around $40 trillion. It's actually more than all the publicly traded companies together combined.
So all publicly traded companies combined is worth something around $30 trillion, while the savings, the assets of the pension funds exceeds for $40 trillion. If we will then combine it with another $40-ish trillion of the private sector and governmental bonds and stuff and real estate and everything, it's going to be like around $80 trillion. But if you will think about the potential of young people, it is much higher. So it's 4 to 5 times larger market than the currently existing market.
So if we'll take the entire wealth based on the current definition, and we'll compare it with the wealth which would be generated by this new model, it will be almost 4 times higher wealth.
And moreover, it's going to be much more fairly distributed. Like all the stories about 1% owning 80% of the wealth in the United States, as much as like it's not quite true, it's still somewhere there, is going to change, flip from like upside down to a new state where you basically own 100% of your future, and now we can sell 10%, and this money is going to be enough for your upbringing and your like elementary education. And then another 10% will allow you to finish college education and actually cover all your bills, or to start a new business. So we're talking about like radically changing the perception of what wealth is to eliminate the problem which is otherwise unsolvable from the current political perspective, from the current economical perspective.
And if you think about it, it's even more natural. You know, like we used to have this connection between generations when the different generations of the same family would support each other. Now this connection is broken. It works for some of us.
But now this connection is replaced with governmental support. And it's been okay for like last 50, 60 years. The pension system is not as old as we think it is. Like it's probably the first examples of it is 100 years old. But from the perspective of connecting the pension funds assets, like the $40 trillion of pension funds in the United States being invested in younger generations through investing in their own stock, A, makes younger generation much richer, B, provides the capital which younger generation need to start, C, redistributed quite differently and drastically in understanding what actually is the wealth of the nation and the wealth of the humanity.
And will allow us to build also much healthier relationship in between generation when previous generation would invest in young people and then will get the benefits from this investment when they need these funds while retiring.
Again, think about this through the prism. There is no those money which publicly traded company worth. this money is in the future. And if, unless you guys work, there's no this money at all. Like, if no one works in these companies, there's no market. But if you exist and you work and you will have this income in the future, and it's embedded into the fact that the company's worth this money, then it's a no-brainer understanding that this money will exist. Or like as a market phenomena, your future incomes cannot not exist.
And it's also not only about what is your median potential in terms of what you can earn. It's also about this probability of you would be this successful example. Another attempt for this model to work was around student athletes in the United States. There is a fund which decided to invest in dozens of athletes, offering them to buy 5 to 10% of their future contract if they will get to the major league. Most of the students will not get there. Only a tiny share of them will be able to get to the major league. But only because of this tiny probability of this huge success, each of the students, while they were 16, each of the students got $10 million valuation. So for 5 to 10%, each of them got $500 to $1 million. So imagine this potential, and imagine that each of you represent this probability. Each of you represent this this version of the future when you will be this 1% in your field. And the value of this chance is quite high. And because of that, the value of you right now is much higher than you can imagine.
Then knowing that in the next 15 years, the productivity will increase 4 times again, maybe even more, but like we'll see. It's like it's harder and harder to increase productivity 4 times every 15 years, but now we see that AI and robotics will likely allow us to achieve the same result, the 4-time growth of the productivity in the next 15 years. You can imagine that it will drastically make it even more rational to invest in young people, knowing that their productivity will increase 4 times in 15 years, knowing that they will create more wealth and more product in the future than the previous generations was creating, like than our generation created, than the generation before us created. So it's very rational and very market-driven idea, which does not require even governmental regulations in place to be executed. Like, we did it to ourselves, and it's just a matter of time. And because like we don't see any other solution for the current system to not collapse under the weight of the governments providing more and more benefit to the older generation. Like, everyone can see this. Like, it's just like no one understands what's the root of it, and no one see the exit out of it. While this changes everything just as soon as we decide that the definition of wealth is different. That the definition of wealth is our individual earnings multiplied towards the next 30 years of our future, rather than a company earnings multiplied 30 years of the future of the company. I guess we can come to questions.
Can you repeat the question?
Hi, my name is Karina, and this is a really lovely and fine idea. Thank you so much for sharing the future in your own eyes. I guess the question would be that This is the future value, which is discounted at the current kind of financial models to the present value, which builds on the intrinsic value of an individual. But there are so many unknowns how this individual will perform in the long term. What sort of risk models have you accommodated in terms of the health of the individual, like there is right now, the obesity crisis, the mental health crisis, then many of the young people, they are glued to their phones for the quick dopamine. What is the output? Where is this prediction and projection? What it's based off? In terms of that, there will be the deliverables that this individual won't default like any of the companies might.
Cool. Do we actually need to repeat the question? So, okay. Okay, you go. VC.
As I mentioned, this unpredictability is actually good for you. If it will be predictable, who will be this billion-dollar individual in this room? Only this individual will get all the funding, and the rest will not. But because no one can predict it, and the reality is that the same with the startups, no one can for sure tell you which of those startups, which started today, will become these trillion-dollar companies. But we know for sure.
Moreover, the statistics over the last 30 years clearly shows that 70% of the startups dies, losing all the money.
But every decade, $2 trillion companies were created. And there is no reason to assume that in next decade, another $2 trillion companies won't be created. And because of those 2 out of 30,000 startups outcome, this huge outcome allows every startup today to get $10 million valuation.
If all the investors would just pool all the money in the one single fund and then invest in all the startups, the return on the on all the money which was invested would be something around 5x over the 30 years. So it's not even a lottery to some extent. It's like a no-brainer win for the venture investors, except that it doesn't work this way. We don't pool all the money. Everyone is like competing in the market themselves. Like everyone is looking for where to invest and stuff. And yet the thing is, all the thousands of new startups getting the funding, only few of them will get to the point to cover the investment in all of the startups and return money to the investors with a big interest.
And if you, as an investor, will decide not to invest in young individuals who play online games, you will lose most of the opportunities. So all our assumptions, how should look like, how this individual who would be successful should look like, wouldn't work. Most of the individuals who created these trillion-dollar companies, they played online games. They made all of this weird stuff when they were teenagers, and still they created this value. And maybe some of those individuals won't create value, but because of this unpredictability, is actually a good thing for you and a good thing for each of us right now.
What's interesting is that we all have this weird picture in our mind. This new trillion-dollar companies were all created by the dropouts of the college, young 20-year-olds and stuff. The truth is different. There's a bell curve, a normal distribution, which is around 45 years. The age when the companies was started, the age of the founders when the companies was started. The majority of the successful billion-dollar companies in Silicon Valley are the companies created by the people between their 30 and 50, not before 30, not after 50. But some were actually created in both of these extremes. But the majority was created by people after some time. And if you look at the fact that the kid is playing or not playing games, you will never be able to predict what is the kid going to do when he's 45 years old, and if the kid is going to build a billion-dollar company.
Hi, thank you. My name is Daria, and I have a question. How actually is this concept going to help Gen Z? Let me elaborate. Let's assume everybody starts doing the thing you just described, like making a company out of themselves and putting that into market. We would have a competition of millennials and Gen Z, which are equally predicted into the future and brought into NPV to current evaluation. But in terms of millennials, they have more experience, so they have more to show. Their CVs are longer, basically. It means that their valuation would be higher, so they would be more attractive to invest in, just because this misinformation between lack of information is less for millennials. So right now, if everything you described happens, millennials will get all the money, and then they will just keep on showing that they will be earning, so they will be more, I don't know, fixed, more stable. How would that shift to Gen Z later? Thank you.
First of all, there are more money to invest than
Then we are in the summer of our future.
yes. And so, as I mentioned, that right now, only in the United States, by pension funds, more than $40 trillion are invested. So we will compete not with each other, we will compete with the old world. And we'll just take all of this funding to us rather than compete with each other.
You maybe heard this phrase, the software is eating the world. It's young people's future will be eating the world.
And in terms of, if you compare millennials with Gen Zs, actually when you are already, when you are older, it's much more predictable. Because it's much more predictable, it's already would be distributed in some way. So some of us will have a smaller relation, some of us will have a higher relation. So with Gen Zs, right now, everything will be more equal because no one can predict. So actually, if you will be the first generation which will adopt it massively, you will benefit the most because this equal distribution will allow more people to shine.
Moreover,
and to show
millennials and moreover, millennials and the older generation are going to be biased towards like, what is it, slavery, indentured servitude? Like, no way I'm selling my future. This is my future. This is just an old way thinking. That's why the more progressive younger generations will just jump on the opportunity. Otherwise, you don't have the future. I'm sorry. It's been stolen from you already. Like, as we speak, it's done. The race is over.
My question is kind of in a way related to what you have been mentioning right now, because say you're invested in a startup, but with a startup yes, it may fail eventually, but at least you kind of expect the startup to show as an investor that there is product market fit for whatever the startup is doing. But as an individual, when this individual is quite young, he might not even necessarily know where the potential of this individual is. So how are you going to quantify this?
There is no product market fit for governmental bonds. It's just an expectation that people are going to pay the taxes and the government will be able to return the money. That's a huge chunk of the investment is in governmental bonds. And there's no, the return on investments is small compared to private companies and stuff like this. And people get trillions of dollars invested in this type of assets. Imagine that people themselves is the most stable and predictable asset which will always exist and grow. The market will only exist because of you. If there is no people to work and produce effort, there is no market and therefore nothing worth anything. There will no be taxes, there will no be company, there will no be productivity unless you guys work and unless you guys produce value.
And in general, for the investors, it's really bad idea to invest in one company, or it will be really bad idea to invest in one individual. The same with, for example, movies. Everyone tried to build models to predict the future of a movie based on actors, directors, screenwriters, etc. None of these models worked. But if you have a slate of movies, of like 20 movies, and they quite diversified, it's quite predictable investment. And the same with individuals. For sure, no one knows who will win and who will be this really outstanding professional. But if you invest in whole class of 2024, you actually will have a pretty good outcome of it.
Think of this as an ETF or index of a sort. Like every 15-year-old can get into an index. And this index will actually be quite predictable in terms of like, if it's everyone, then we expect that this is a share of the future market.
But also you live in most likely you live in a quite conservative market. In California, most of the seed stage startups, they don't have any product market fit. They have potential for product market fit, as you have a potential. But they definitely don't have a product market fit, which you can compare with the valuations which they will get in the seed stage.
Thank you for such a fascinating idea. From where I'm sitting, it sounds like it's a futures market for people's potential. And I was wondering how you model unpredictable events that would apply to everyone, i.e. acts of God or global warming, and appreciate that this doesn't necessarily, the same problem is facing the current system, so just hearing what your strategy for your model would be.
Yes, like one of the first pushbacks which we got was this idea that individuals can die. So what we did, we just compare it with the rate of death among companies. And we showed that
S&P 500, like we basically show the average age, the death rate for the S&P 500 companies, and and the statistic is
they on average
22 years.
22 years. So actually individuals are much better in terms of those events. So if you will take any of those events, like different type of events, so you will see that companies right now are affected much more than individuals. Individuals are much more resilient. Like nature created us quite resilient.
Yes, there will be a year when you're going to lose your job and your profession is not going to be needed anymore. You will adapt. You will die or adapt. Yes. And we don't see everyone dying. Like we don't see that like half of us dying because of the change in the market. No, we adapt. Most of us adapt. Because we had a lot of, because we were building our model based on the Silicon Valley entrepreneurs. We just needed to like focus on some specific investors to explain them the concept on the particular cohort, which we truly believe works for every individual. It's just like we need to calculate it for every individual differently. There are going to be different valuations, different expectations, stuff like this. But because we took the Silicon Valley entrepreneurs, we kept hearing this anecdote that you earn money and then you're out. Like you just like now you have all the money in the world. Why do you need to work to continue working? What's interesting, it is actually true for a specific range. After $10 million and before $30-something million. Like if you got into this range, $10 to $30 million, you're like, all right, I'm clearly not the best entrepreneur in this world. Like it was just a chance. Like I won my lottery. I'm not going to create a $1 billion company. So I'm okay with the $30 million. It's going to be enough for the rest of my life. If you made less than 10, which is a rare case for majority, you're like, it's still not enough. I paid half of it as a tax, so I end up with $5 million. I can buy a house, that's it. No, I have to continue for another shot. If you are higher than this, you're like, hey, hell yeah, I'm so good. I will create another one and I'm going to be a billionaire. So this is like just like the specific small, tiny share, it's less than 10% of all the entrepreneurs who are fitting in this like 10 to 30, whose usually more likely decision is like to stop doing this. For the rest, they actually continue.
We just included this into the model. So
we even took those who are in betweens are disappearing. They have their burnouts, they have their sabbaticals. They just do nothing. We browse through LinkedIn and like Crunchbases, like all possible databases, which can show us what was the occupation of founders of companies which got their financing from VC firms in the past. And we figured that there's only 10% of time, on average, when people are out of doing something, out of working for a corporation which acquired their previous company, out of like just jumping in to have a job, stable pay, just because they like cannot afford to be entrepreneur anymore, or those who actually made tons of money and then, okay, it looks like I can have my perfect life, but then no, I will continue doing stuff again, like a space company after creating a delivery company.
So you just should include this all into the model. And for sure, for different verticals, different models will have to be created. And we as a society actually have enough data to actually build the models for different verticals.
Okay, we'll take 2 more questions.
Hello, my name is Christina. I am a co-founder of educational startup, a future millionaire. As you mentioned,
Already today.
Changing perspective.
Already today, yeah, changing perspective. So in your last interview to Alexander Sokolovsky, you have mentioned that you have already invested in 15 people. And you said that you are invested in these people who are actually has a good tracking. So there's people like Marina Magilko, who is an entrepreneur, blogger. And so there's people who already have they mentioned good tracking. But what about people who are, for example, sitting in this room, like startuppers who are having the like path unfolding? And what about like us? Could you please give us any maybe piece of advice, like how to basically make you invest in us? Thank you.
But what about us?
Yeah, what about us?
What about us? So the thing is, it's misleading to say that we invested in people with good track record. Good track record for us was lots of failures in the past as well. Meaning that if you actually keep doing this and you're failing, you are persistent, man. Like you actually moving towards the one successful company. And we invested half of the investment which we did was in people who never had a success in the past, like never had a real success in their past. But switching to like people sitting here, we have not developed the model, so I wouldn't be able to say what it is, but just a brainstorm, like what's the average salary in the United Kingdom annually?
I think it's around 50K.
So let's say it's 50K. Multiply it on 30, and it's $1.5 million pounds, probably, like whatever it was the sum. This is sort of the expected model, which then would have to be adjusted towards what's the average expectation for people to work, how many years people work in the United Kingdom, I don't know, well, when they go to pension, I don't know, like all this stuff, like what's the difference between people who have higher education in their annual income and who don't have. So if it's drastic in the United States, it's like half. So the average income for people without higher education is something like $50,000-$60,000, and with is 120. So it's like double.
So
it's a no-brainer to invest in a young person, like in all of the young people, if the expectation is that they're going to make $3 million throughout their life rather than 1.5. And if you can have your upside in this, it's a no-brainer to invest. And for you, it's a no-brainer to take this money because it's like 1.5 against 3. And if you only sell like 5 to 10% to get there, it worth it.
So it's true that currently we do invest in individuals, in founders who already built companies before, and who already have some signal. It's just because we're only in the beginning of this journey. We see it's important to prove to the market, to prove to these investors that actually this model works.
It's gonna be risk takers, the investors who are actually willing to risk and get a higher benefit, who will invest in this type of assets, security in the beginning.
But we believe that this model will be available to anyone in this room for 5 years from now. So it definitely will, we kind of right now in discussion with you about the future which is coming. And it's not always when, for example, when you develop a startup, you know that it will take some time before everyone will get the product and everyone will be able to benefit out of it. But it's really important to, even right now, even when this type of investment tools are not available to everyone, it's still important to see this future and to optimize your life, knowing that this future is coming.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing your vision. It's a fascinating idea, but also quite scary to me. So my question is about social mobility. Do you think it's going to improve it or make the problem worse? Because my concern is that if you want to raise money as a young person, your first investors could be your family and friends. So if you are rich, your valuation will be higher. And also if you go to a private school, you know, your chances of success are higher, therefore you will get more money. Also, if you live in the UK, but not in the third world, again, your chances for getting income in the future are higher. So we could actually distribute the wealth from rich families to rich kids, rather than empower those who are bright but don't have the opportunities at the start.
You know, when we look at the wealth distribution data,
World wealth distribution. World wealth?
No, wealth distribution data. So we looked from many angles, and what we see right now that the difference of the wealth in between generations is the most significant difference compared to any other slicing you will make over this data. So we do believe that it will lead to a better outcome. Will it solve all the problems in the world? No. Will it make it the world immediately completely efficient and equal?
Fair.
No. But will it make it closer to where we all want it to be? We are pretty sure that it will happen. One other data point which you can look at is that if you will take the wealth distribution, it's much more biased and much more skewed compared to income distribution. So, but this model will make your income to be your wealth. And because of that, we can expect that the wealth distribution will be much closer to the income distribution today. And the income distribution is much better than the wealth distribution in the current world. So even from this perspective, we can predict that the world will be better than it is today. Will it be perfect? No. And definitely there are like things which can affect significantly your life if, for example, your parents cannot provide support and things like that. But currently, because when you are young, you don't have support, if you don't have rich parents, actually, it's much likely that you will not start a company and you will, like all these famous dropouts from colleges in the United States, they all from upper middle class families. They don't have student debt. they can afford easily to just cancel their tuition and start a startup because their parents paid for their college. So we do believe that this model will unlock potential for many individuals who right now, because of their circumstances, they stuck in the decisions which on every step
make it worse.
Make it worse.
So it was a smart answer based on statistics. The silly one is there is not that much rich kids in the world to invest all of the money in the world in them. It's like just impossible. Otherwise, the richest people are going to be the most stupid to invest all of their money into like overly valued assets like securities. It's not going to work that way. Like it's going to be a tiny share invested in these guys. Yes, they will get their money earlier and at a higher valuation. I doubt that it's going to be from their parents because their parents are going to be like the one who actually know what they're worth, and it's not necessary. Like it's not necessarily going to be the first thing. Like, oh, I will invest in my son. No, he's playing online games too much. I've never been doing this. So in this one, like funny answer to this. And what was the second one? Oh, God, I forgot. Okay, yeah, I'll leave it for the future.